Hi, everyone. I want to talk to you today about a book that I've just finished that I think is incredibly important and very timely. It's called Open Heart Warrior Spirit, A Man's Guide to Living with Cancer by a guy named Trevor Maxwell. So I met Trevor in person at the Society of Clinical Oncology conference in Chicago, and we had a brief conversation. But I didn't really understand the depth of his story and the profundity of what he is up to. Basically, the short version of his medical situation, he's a stage 4 cancer survivor who's had seven at least surgeries, really deep, scary surgeries to remove tumors from his body. And what he's been through, I thought I'd been through quite a bit with my two blood cancers, stem cell transplant, acute GVHD, and now chronic GVHD. But yeah, my surgeries have been pretty minor. Some cataract surgeries, an appendectomy, and the corneal transplant that put new skin on my eyes, basically. But he's been opened up repeatedly in ways that I think I would find completely impossible to deal with and to prepare for. Anyway, so he's a brave guy, and he's even braver because he wrote this book. So what is the book all about? Well, the cover of the book, of course, has an image of a wolf, and this is an important metaphor in the book because he is offering wolf packs as a good analogy for how men should behave when they're diagnosed with cancer. And the problem, of course, with men is that we don't go to the doctor. Therefore, we're likely to get diagnosed with a later stage of cancer, more serious. We have worse outcomes, a higher death rate. We don't tend to ask for second opinions. We generally have, less likelihood of having health insurance in the first place. We don't tend to ask for help. We don't want to burden other people. We tend to isolate. And of course, all these are very self-destructive tendencies, especially when you're facing a really troublesome health issue. So men also engage in more actively self-destructive behaviors, smoking, drinking to excess, and abusing drugs. And so we tend to struggle a lot when we're dealt a bad bit of medical news. And so we tend to isolate ourselves, and we experience higher levels of anxiety and depression, often as a direct result of about that isolation. So he is telling us that wolves travel in packs, and he told me something about wolves I didn't know, which is when one is sick or injured, the other members of the pack kind of take care of it. They protect it, and they tend to try to encourage it to recover. Wolves are not lone wolves. That's kind of a misconception that I had anyway. So this metaphor really guides the whole imagery of Man Up to Cancer, which is the organization. It's now an official 501c3 nonprofit that Trevor has founded. And its Facebook group is called The Howling Place, and I'm on there posting stuff and responding to other people all the time. Anyway, so what is the book all about, really? Well, basically the book is inviting men to recognize that we have problems when it comes to opening ourselves up emotionally in the first place, and also that we are fighting in some ways against ourselves. There's a lot of toxic positivity out in the culture generally, which is the idea that you can sort of think yourself into a better health. Even with a terrible cancer prognosis, people will tell you things like, well, just stay positive and you got this and stay strong and all that stuff. And Trevor really does a number on that sort of popular misconception about cancer, that it's somehow all in our head, and that we could, if we really tried hard, we could beat it. But he nevertheless really focuses our attention on the special problems that men face. However, he is also engaging our at our idea of our own masculinity to some extent by appealing to our warrior spirit. And what is that warrior spirit all about? Well, it's not, 100% fight, kill cancer, kick its ass, rah, rah, rah. He embraces that, as he says, up to a point. The war metaphors that dominate cancer discourse, for him, as he acknowledges, they're controversial. And at a certain point, they really become counterproductive. He really hates, as I do, the phrase he or she lost his or her battle with cancer when a person dies. That's a phrase that's just unacceptable. However, he does want to engage our warrior spirit, as he calls it, in a few ways, by refusing to be a victim, and by taking charge of our own circumstances, getting support, being accountable, finding others to walk with us. And he uses that walking metaphor a lot. He also says, at one point in the book, that writing was one of his best tools for processing and understanding his reality. And that's something that I really resonate with as well. The reason why I read the book in the first place, because I met Trevor. I know he's a journalist who has written a great deal in his life. And we talked about how writing is actually especially beneficial for men, because given the traditional views of masculinity, right, we're kind of supposed to be independent, rugged individuals who are self-sustaining and who don't need sympathy, who've got this under control, right? That's how we're kind of conditioned to behave. So there are very few organic social opportunities for us to just open up to our buddies about how we're feeling. But writing, of course, is a private activity that we don't have to share with anybody. And studies have shown over and over, not only is writing incredibly beneficial emotionally, psychologically, it also, if you're writing about meaningful emotional topics, it helps you to become more resilient in an immunological way. They've measured this, that your immune system regenerates cells faster as a result of having written about an emotional topic and basically gotten rid of the psychological blockage that has stopped you from expressing your feelings about a rough situation. This could be cancer, as it has been in my case, but it could also be trauma, or just general frustration at the state of the universe or yourself. There's all kinds of studies that show people with chronic illnesses who write about a meaningful emotional topic tend to have better day-to-day quality of life. They go to the doctor less often. They rely less on painkillers. And I can speak from experience here as well, that my own writing practice, I write poetry, I write, scholarly stuff with not much emotion attached to it, but I've also written a lot of personal essays about my medical situation. And I'm working on another book about how writing actually helped me to cope with my two blood cancers, my acute graft versus host and my chronic graft versus host, as well as all kinds of other, things that happen to you in the course of a 53-year-old life. So anyway, I really feel like this book that Trevor has written not only reaffirms my fundamental belief that is by opening up emotionally, that man can access powers of self-healing, not in the sense of getting rid of cancer or anything like that, but just recovering faster from our problems, from the bumps in the road, the bruises that we experience in our day-to-day lives, especially if you've had any kind of illness. That writing is a really powerful, important tool when you use it to access your emotions and to unblock the sort of psychological barriers to healthy self-expression. And that's, of course, why men benefit more from that kind of writing activity than women do in general. Of course, there are exceptions. And there are people who don't really fit into their gender category, of course. But in general, and I'm one of those general cases, where men find an outlet in writing about their emotions that they don't have in their regular existence. that in a way you can put your masculinity, your tough guy image on the shelf when you sit down with a pen and paper or with your phone or your laptop and just start writing about how you feel. That all of a sudden the tears come, and Trevor writes a lot about crying in his book, as I think is incredibly helpful and normal. I cried a lot when I was writing. I cried a lot when I wasn't writing. But the worst I ever felt was the 6 months when I couldn't write because I was so badly traumatized by having been blinded basically by acute graft versus host disease and then brought to the brink of death and back. So once I started to write again after a 6 month period of just like, I got nothing to say, all of a sudden I started to feel much more like myself and could start on that long, rather painful road of healing that Trevor wants us all to travel. Once we have kicked cancer's butt, as he might say, I'm not quoting him directly. But anyway, again, I strongly recommend, if you know a man with cancer, if you are a man with cancer, if you know a man, if you care about a man, if you are a man, this book is just irreplaceable, and I think it'll open your eyes to all kinds of things that no one has had the courage to say in a book the way Trevor has.